Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Rem and Sam podcast. We're mixing things up a little bit today. We're recording this part Wednesday morning because we wanted to give ourselves room to react to the Tuesday night play-in games in case they were really good games. And they were good games. So we're going to react to those in a second. And then for those of you that see the wardrobe change, we recorded a little bit as well too Tuesday before the games because we wanted to be able to get this out Wednesday at, a pretty decent time. But am I gonna have to cover up the shirt? I just realized I had an Under Armour shirt. I don't know if we are allowed to show that on the pod. I think only other brands. But like I said, we had good games last night for the play-in game. Lakers Pelicans was first up. And for a second there, I know the talks were for the last couple of days, do the Lakers get tricky because the winner of this play-in game was going to have to play the Denver Nuggets in the first round of the playoffs. So I don't know how much of a victory that is for being the 7th seed if you're going to get matched up against the best team in the league. But they're, and the Lakers had the Anthony Davis injury potential as well too. Davis was kind of limping, holding his back out of that last game versus the Pelicans. But the Lakers, they do the right thing. LeBron, they do the right thing. And honestly, if you're going to play the Nuggets, might as well just do it early and get it out of the way early, because at least you yourself are going to be a little bit fresher potentially in the playoffs. I know if you're having to play the Nuggets in the conference championship, and I know that that's what the Lakers are hoping to get to, they're hoping to get to that point in the playoffs and, further anyways. But if you're going to have to beat the best team in the league, at least you can have a little bit of advantage of hopefully some help and some freshness as well too. And they have been playing better. LeBron looked fantastic in these last two games versus the Pelicans. Basically put up 2 back-to-back triple doubles. I know he ended up with a 9 and 9 in this one. He was a 23, 9 and 9, 3 steals, 2 blocks. He had several steals in that last game as well too, the Sunday game to close the season, where he was flying around the court and in a way that, really at a high intensity level that he's been showing. He's really been cranking up. And you could see in this one too, the way he was attacking the rim. I think when Valanciunas was in the game, they were really making an effort to just be like, let's go after Valanciunas. Let's see if we can pull up the LeBron shot chart real quick, because I know in the second quarter he had 12 points, and that's really where the Lakers ended up winning the game, was in the second quarter. I think they outscored the Pelicans 34-16 in that stretch. And I think Zion for one was fantastic in this game, but he was 10 second quarter points, but I think it was a minus 16 on the quarter. Yeah, you can see LeBron really trying to attack the rim here if you're able to pull up the shot chart on Basketball Reference. But the Pelicans were, like we said, Zion was fantastic in this one. And honestly, the Pelicans only lose by 4. And if Zion finishes the game, maybe they end up winning the game, because he comes up limping as well too, like Davis in the last game, where he ends up having to sit out. He just goes back to the locker room at one point in the fourth quarter, and he was kind of limping after he landed after a made shot. And I don't know, I haven't really looked up to see what happened yet at this point. Like we said, it's Wednesday morning. Let me see if we can get a live injury update, because they're still, since they were the 7th seed going into the play-in game, they lost to the Lakers. They're still going to have a chance to play the Kings, so they're still going to need Zion Williamson. It says hamstring. Is that what we're looking at? A hamstring injury? But is he downplaying it? Of course. But if it was serious enough to make him leave that game, where I don't know if they were trying to, the Pelicans have always been playing this really safe with Zion. So I don't know if this is them just pushing it to the limit of playing it safe. Because like we're saying, they do have the extra benefit of playing another play-in game. They were also the 7th seed, so that play-in game will be at home as well too. They're not going to have to travel. The Kings are going to have to come to them. So pause. But I think if it was serious enough to, make him leave this game in the fourth quarter, like we're saying, where he was tied, where he was bringing the kind of single-handedly bringing the Pelicans back as well too. And they tried guarding him with LeBron for a large portion of this game. And then I think near the end there, right before Zion went out, there was a couple of possessions where Davis was guarding him. And even the way Zion was taking Davis to the rim, it was just like, nobody is stopping this guy tonight. He was, I think, no, he did get to 40. I was going to say 38, but yeah, he got to 40 points on the night, 11 rebounds, 5 assists as well, to 17 of 27 from the field. So, I mean, Zion now, unfortunately, the stats for this game will just disappear and they'll never count. But Zion now in like a playoff moment, a big game moment, like throwing the team on his back the way he did was super impressive. And I think really, if they're able to get past the Kings and then get into the play-in or get into the playoffs, and we see Zion in the playoffs, we'll see what happens with the Zion storyline going forward. But is it just better for Zion to just be like, oh no, the hammy, it's too bad. I'm not going to be able to be in the Kings game. I guess, well, no, because then we do the Zion injury storylines as well too. We get Stephen A talking about how this guy can never stay healthy. But I think, dropping 40 points and this is a couple of games against other bigs as well too, where like we mentioned that Milwaukee game when it happened, and he was super impressive against Giannis in that game. So in a way, I guess I kind of would have wanted to see Zion versus Jokic in the first round. And now that I think about that, because the Lakers Nuggets is going to be fantastic. And like we're saying, those teams probably going to have to meet up at some point. Just go ahead and get it out of the way in the first round. But just from let's see what, Zion matchup stand, because we saw what the Davis Jokic matchup was last year. And I guess, Davis offensively, let's see what the Anthony Davis stats were in that playoff series. Cause I think it's a little bit better than even myself just remember watching it, because Jokic was so dominant that series. And I don't want to turn this into a Nuggets Lakers preview. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that more with Sam this weekend. But like we're saying, he was really able to be Zion was able to be a matchup problem for Davis. He was able to be a matchup problem for Giannis. And I don't know if he would be a matchup problem for Jokic, but that's definitely the boss level guy for him to go against in the Western Conference in the league. But Davis in the playoff series versus the Nuggets last year, Western Conference Finals, 27 and 14, 49.3% from the field. So, just a tick under 50% from your big man. 11 blocks as well, too, in 4 games. But 27 and 14, just looking at it, is hard numbers to complain about if you're a Lakers fan. The only problem was, Jokic was just on an all-time heater last year. But like we said, I think if Zion is playing, I think my hot take, if Zion is playing and he's out there and he's able to be healthy, he's also going to be a matchup problem for Sabonis, where, the Kings looked fantastic in this game against the Warriors, where, they were shooting the 3 incredibly well, but I don't know, with the youth that the Pelicans can have, I think they just would be able to keep up a little bit better. And like we're saying, the big matchups there. Now, there was a stretch, like we're saying, in the second quarter where the Lakers were pulling away or like making a comeback and then getting the lead a little bit. And then they were kind of even through the third. But there's a couple of moments there without Zion. And when the Lakers were kind of making their comeback when Brandon Ingram was in the game. And I think Brandon Ingram did play pretty good in this game. Like, he didn't miss a ton of shots. No, yeah, he was 4 for 12, but he had four really good assists in this game. So, his playmaking, his vision, like, he's still, and we were saying this with Team USA, like, he was still being a connective tissue type guy. And that stuff is, I think for him was like, he was kind of doing that better than he had done that before in his career. But the 4 for 12 from the field, 2 free throw attempts. And McCollum had more field goal attempts in this game than Brandon Ingram. And McCollum's been like one of the best 3-point shooters in the league down the stretch for this team at the end of the year here. But he didn't shoot them 1 for 9, finally came back to earth in this game. But I mean, it was really Zion, like we were saying, keeping him in it there for a while. Trey Murphy hit a couple of threes. Trey Murphy hit a high arcing three in the third quarter. That was just ridiculous, but that was only one of his 2 for 6 makes. But the Ingram, McCollum, Valanciunas combo in the starting lineup. So they started Zion, Herb Jones, McCollum, Ingram, and Valanciunas. And Zion +3 for the game. Herb Jones +1, but the McCollum, Ingram, Valanciunas combo was -17, -16, and -13 respectively. So the best lineup that they were running for the Pelicans was when they were going with Zion, and then they brought in Alvarado and Dyson Daniels for a minute, and we're going defensive backcourt. And then I think it was Zion, Nance, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, McCollum is the closers for the team there for a little bit. And I think they were mixing in Alvarado as well too down the stretch. And Alvarado, honestly, even after Zion goes out, like they were in the game, and then Alvarado throws a pass into the corner where D'Angelo Russell intercepts, and that was kind of the play that broke them there at the end. And the Lakers end up winning by 4. But Zion showing rising to the occasion at a high level was amazing to see, because I mean, that's going to be one of the things to watch for this playoffs is all of these young guys now, not necessarily in the playoffs for their first time, because like we saw Anthony Edwards in the playoffs last year. We've seen, I guess the Thunder didn't make the playoffs. We've seen Shea in the playoffs before, even though he was at a different level of player at that time. That would have been back on would the Chris Paul team have been the last team that SGA was in a playoff game against? We can do a quick double check. Yeah, the 1920 OKC team would have been the last time we saw SGA in the playoffs. So it's been a minute. And like, the Wolves got the Nuggets early first round matchup last year. Weren't really expected to make a run, but as the 3 seed now, I think are in a little bit more of a position of power. And Chet as well too. I know, like the Thunder have all the young guys, but a chance to see them all on a big stage. And Zion as well too is in that group. So, all of these guys now in the big moments, seeing what they're able to accomplish, and seeing Zion as the first one to step up and the first one to really rise to the occasion was incredible to see. And again, if they're able to get in the playoffs, say he struggles, say I'm not, hopefully, don't want to throw the jinx on him. I'm just, what are the potential storylines for Zion Williamson that are out there? Obviously, if it goes south, then Stephen A is then the franchise player thing is we're going to have to revisit that conversation, because like you're saying, the league is so stacked. So really what's going to happen is the guys that are going to be successful in the playoffs this year. I mean, if Halliburton now with the Giannis injury, and maybe he's feeling a little bit better off the rest that they're able to get, different things. Like the players that play well in the playoffs, the young guys are really going to separate themselves this year after we really saw how talented the league was. So I think Zion solidifying himself as, hey, don't forget about me, I'm still one of the top young guys in the league, was definitely encouraging to see. And another guy that was a top young guy in the league, the Iowa kid, you can't keep doubting Keegan Murray, people, because the draft, when he was the number 4 pick for the Kings, the Ivy was the 5th pick, and I think that was the other guys. Like, do we want the athletic backcourt? And ultimately the Kings end up bringing in Malik Monk to fill in that spot, but they didn't even have Malik Monk for this game. And I know once Malik Monk and Kevin Huerter went down for Kings, I mean, I don't know what the expectations were for Kings fans at their highest. I would imagine like Western Conference Finals or something like that, if you're, a really super optimistic Kings fan. But again, super optimistic Kings fan. But, thinking about it big picture, and especially after the results of this game and how amazing it turned out for the Kings, getting a chance they're not in the playoffs yet. They still have to beat the Pelicans, but at least their chances are, they survive in advance. So the fact that this worked out, I was thinking like, ultimately it doesn't seem like Malik Monk is going to be there next year. It seems like some team is going to step up and drop the bag for him. I don't know what the future of Kevin Huerter is, but Keegan Murray and De'Aaron Fox is a little bit more of a long-term thing for this team. So the fact that they've been kind of forced into that situation, I don't know if we have to pause that or not, but the fact that that's kind of happened is been kind of good for this team. And I know Keegan Murray, again, with the injuries, he's been forced to take some more shots. And because of that, his scoring has went up, but he was in I think the last 20 games, he's like, 37, 38% from three. So been, a good shooter still in that Keegan Murray number. But I mean, in this Kings Warriors game, he was almost 40. That's the number where it was almost 40 points. I think he was 32 for the game, 8 of 13 from three though. And I was like, that has to be close to a career high for Keegan Murray. But then no, I was like, he had that 12-point, the game where he hit the 12 3-pointers earlier this year, and he had like a 40+ point game. And that one was his career high. But career high for a playoff game, well, I guess an unofficial playoff game for Keegan Murray, because again, these stats won't count. But the fact that, I don't know, with the a little bit of spacing as well, too, you bring in, you're forced to play Keon Ellis more, who gives you a little more defense, and he was 3 for 4 for 3 in this game as well, too. So if he's going to be hitting shots, then obviously he's going to be a much more attractive player on the court. But they've got Herter for a couple more years as well, too. But Monk is making $9 million this year, and I assume a team is going to up it a little more than that in free agency. Herter is $16 million next year and $17 million the year after that. But again, I don't know what the plans are with Kevin Herter on the team. Harrison Barnes, I think, is still safe and sound for now. He was hitting some big shots as well, too. He was also 3 for 4 from 3, it looks like. So, the Warriors, unfortunately, I don't think them missing the playoffs is totally, shocking at this point in the season, staring at it. But obviously, big picture, the big three, not good. We'll be curious to ask Sam if, I think there's some interesting, will we see this guy again on the team potential with some of these guys? And the Warriors, obviously, like a big glaring one with Klay Thompson hitting free agency and just the whole Draymond drama from this year. How do they move forward with that? I mean, I'm not saying that they're going to trade him, but I assume Draymond will be back. I'm just saying that they're going to have to look at all of the possibilities going forward to try to maximize the last couple of years with, not the last couple of years, but the end of Steph Curry's 30s, and they're going to want to manage that to the best of their abilities. So we'll see how they'll look at the roster in the offseason. We'll definitely see what Sam thinks about that one too on this weekend's pod. But tonight's play-in games, we've got the Heat versus the Sixers and the Hawks versus the Bulls. And we're big DeJounte Murray fans. Shout out to the former San Antonio homie. But this Bulls team, I think this Bulls team is like I want to say number 1 in clutch net rating on the season, but they might be number 2. The Nuggets might be number 1 and the Bulls might be number 2. But anyways, the Bulls being top 2 clutch team in the season has been pretty impressive. And I mean, for those that watched that Knicks Bulls game, was one of the few, the Bulls back on national TV, not been necessarily prominent on ESPN this year, but a close game against the Knicks was super fun. And, this Hawks team has, I get they can be fun. We love Jalen Johnson. We love DeJounte Murray, but I do kind of want to see, I don't know, do we want to see this Bulls team in the playoffs? We get Jimmy Butler and Joel Embiid both in the other games. So, I mean, do we want to get both of those guys in the playoffs as well, too? But the fact that this Bulls team is so good in close games, they're going to be feisty if they can keep the games close. And that means at least the games that they're going to be in are going to be somewhat fun to watch. But right now we've got the Sixers sitting at -5.5. And I believe the Bulls are favored -3 over the Hawks right now. And I think, I don't really want to pick the Heat to beat the Sixers, but there is some, they're plus 184 right now, and I think that's probably the best value of any of the 4 play-in games, the first bout of play-in games, because I think the Kings were -3 over the or +3, sorry, over the Warriors. The Kings were underdogs to the Warriors, but they were only like -118, -108 or something like that on the money line. So it wasn't like great value there, but you can get the Heat and Jimmy Butler for plus money against still a Joel Embiid that's a little banged up. Again, with Embiid and Maxey there, I would like to think that the Sixers are able to just get into the playoffs with a win tonight at home as well too. But the Heat are just gonna be in the game and they're gonna be feisty. Jimmy Butler right now, his over under 24.5 for Jimmy Butler. Would Jimmy Butler get to 25, or would Jimmy Butler have like a 20, 11 assists, 7 rebound type game? Jimmy Butler for 30 right now, though, plus 280 on not unfortunately DRF, but shout out to our friends over at DRF and BetStamp. If you guys want to shop around for the best odds on tonight's game, I definitely recommend BetStamp. Did you guys see the little Pure Vita bracelet in the shot? We're just gonna get everybody a shout out all at once, but I just of all of the value, I think that Heat money line is just decent value. The Hawks as well too are plus 132 tonight versus the Bulls. But again, if the game's close, I do kind of trust the Bulls to get the win. And DeRozan, Kobe White, Caruso, again, I don't know. It's kind of a fun team. And I don't know if it's a Midwest bias. I don't know if we just have all the Chicago stock now that Angel Reese is on the sky. But again, I do kind of want to see this Bulls team at least be feisty against the Hawks and maybe make a team nervous in the next game between either the Sixers or the Heat. But -5.5 as well too. I don't know. I feel like it could be at least a little close game here for Sixers Heat. It might be a competitive one tonight, or maybe I'm just hoping for a good time and not trying to waste my Wednesday evening. But we better get to the rest of the pod. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's Tuesday night. We're just a few moments away from the start of the play-in game. Lakers Pelicans are up first. Of course, as you know, we already talked about that, but basketball hasn't started yet. Thor Ragnarok in the background. That's what TNT's got going on right now as the lead-in. Helena's ripping through Asgard right now. Well, no, they just cut back to Thor and Valkyrie. They're on the ship. They're headed that way. So they're okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's Tuesday night. We're just a few moments away from the start of the play-in game. Lakers Pelicans tips in just a little bit. But since the basketball hasn't quite started yet, Thor Ragnarok on in the background. Not our choice. I mean, it's a great choice, obviously, but that's what it looks. TNT's got Thor Ragnarok as the lead-in for the Lakers Pelicans play-in game. Helena currently ripping through Asgard right now. Oh, we've got Heimdall with the refugees. Thor on his way. So it looks like we're getting in at a good time. But there is still a couple of things that happened over the sports weekend that we wanted to mention quickly that aren't going to change with the play-in game tonight. Some stuff that's already been set in stone, and some stuff that's we've been really looking forward to. UFC 300, the highly anticipated card, and it's one of those cards where it's an anniversary card, and you can't like line up who the legends are in the UFC at the time of the certain anniversaries. I was trying to think about this too earlier today with some of the other leagues, because like I know Peyton Manning won the Super Bowl, the 50th Super Bowl. My brother always brings it up that Manning won the anniversary Super Bowl that year. But I know that was a Broncos defense Super Bowl, so it wasn't like the 07 Super Bowl in the same kind of way. But the 75, when was the 75 team? Did Steph win the MVP or the finals the year that the 75 team? Yeah, the 2021 season. So I believe that would have been that Warriors title run before the Nuggets, or would that have been? Yeah, Warriors would have won the 21-22 final season. So the Steph, you get an all-time guy winning the finals like that. I should have looked up and see who won the NBA finals in the 50th year, but I mean, the UFC did the best that they could to stack the card, get as many great fights as possible. And I mean, it absolutely worked. The fight card was absolutely like a 9 out of 10. It probably was a 10 out of 10 as well, too. I don't really know what you could have added to it to make it better. John Jones, like maybe that's about it, but otherwise the fight card was basically perfect. I mean, the first fight of the night was in the early prelims. So they've got like the prelims and then the main fight card, but then there's the early set of prelims as well too, which I mean, even like a guy that really loves tuning into UFC like myself, and it depends on when, it's sometimes there's college basketball, college football going on as well too, doing these UFC fight cards. Sometime that early prelim gets overlooked. It just happens. It is what it is. But I mean, the first fight of the night was Figueiredo versus Garbrandt in the early prelims. Bobby Green versus Jim Miller early on. But the Jalen Turner fight was the fight that I had my eye on. Of course, we got a lot of Jalen Turner stock. And unfortunately, it's been a rough run for our guy, Jalen Turner. And to actually, the KO is the hard part, obviously. But he's lost 3 of his last 4 now. But those last 2 losses before this TKO were both by split decision. He lost the Gamrot fight in UFC 285, which was not like Gamrot was such, he's such a patient fighter and very technically proficient, but it was a lot of him getting the takedown and then Turner like backing up into the cage and getting back up. And it was, Turner was playing some good defense, but wasn't really making enough of an offensive effort to get the win. And then the Hooker fight, it looked like he was going to win. The Dan Hooker fight, we should clarify, not just the Hooker fight, but the Dan Hooker fight. He did, it looked like he was going to win probably up until like 90 seconds left in the second round. And then, I mean, he had Dan Hooker down pretty good too. And then I don't know if he just flipped a switch and all of a sudden really poured it on. And then even that one still split decision. And it seemed like Turner was on pace to win this fight early on too, but his opponent was able to turn it around. And I just don't want to butcher his last name. Was it Mott? Well, see, I don't want to butcher it, but it was a worthy opponent. Great matchup. And Turner, still a young guy. I believe he's only, 28. So this is not like do we have to sell the Turner stock ordeal? I'll buy all the Turner stock if we're on a dip right now. But this is like, hey, Dana White, don't give up on our guy, because I mean, he, like we were saying, he was fought on the last couple of times he's fought on the big pay-per-view cards. Even if he's in the prelims, they put him, and they've really been trying to, put him in a spot to ascend as a star. But like I said, a couple of unfortunate fights and then another tough matchup in this one as well, too. But got the KO win versus Bobby Green in his last fight. So that would have been the one win of his last 4. And I'm trying to think, the first time that I saw him fight was on I believe it was on the Adesanya Cannonier card. So that was a win he picked up versus Brad Riddell. And he was on a little bit of a win streak at that point. That would have been UFC 276. And then, of course, the minute we get in on the Turner stock, he goes loses 3 of his next 4 fights. But Dana White, don't give up on him. Keep putting him in these spots. I think the fans are tuning in to see him. I'm tuning in to see him. I still enjoy watching him to fight. Like we said, he's only 28. And, the first time I saw him fight, you're like, okay, this is, as I'm trying to watch UFC more and more. It is like that sport where you see a guy and you just go, okay, yeah, this guy actually has all the pieces where he can make a real run. And Turner, the fact that at 6'3", he's fighting a lightweight is pretty crazy. I don't know if smarter people would say that he needs to make a move, but I mean, he's always looked amazing in that weight class. He's always moved incredibly well. And I think, like we were saying, I think he could make a run at some point if he continues to improve. But tough run for our guy Turner here to start. And then we got to the actual prelim card where Diego Lopez, who's been making a little bit of a run here to start his UFC career. He's been around in fight circles for a little bit. I was looking at his Wikipedia page after he looked really impressive in that fight, got the knockout in round 1. And then Kayla Harrison versus Holly Holm. I mean, Kayla Harrison is just about as intimidating a fighter in the female division that's been there in a while. I would argue, I would just say maybe even more, probably maybe most since Nunes. And when I was watching her fight Holm, the first thing that I was like, okay, if there was like a hypothetical now historical matchup, Nunes versus Kayla Harrison, this was her first UFC fight. Holly Holm is a veteran fighter, long historic career. But I think even too, looking at the odds, Kayla Harrison was a heavy favorite. She's at the peak of her powers right now. And you think too, she's like got that wrestling background a little bit. I don't know if, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, whatever it is, that mat work background a little bit. But when Nunes, I mean, that was the one Nunes run there. The one Nunes loss in her run there was when Pena was able to submit her. So I don't know if we're able to run this one in the UFC game. I haven't played the UFC game in a while. Maybe UFC, like, I don't even know how they number them. It's been, let me see. Is it just UFC 1, UFC 2, UFC 3? I'm just going to go UFC 2 and see what comes up. I think UFC, if that's how they label them, I think that would be okay. UFC 2's got McGregor and Ronda Rousey on the cover. UFC 3 is just McGregor. Maybe I was locked in because maybe I was locked in a little bit earlier than I thought because these do go back a little bit. Okay, maybe 2020. Oh, I don't think I got UFC 5. Yeah, I don't remember, unfortunately. But if somebody can sim the hypothetical Amanda Nunes versus Kayla Harrison, that'd be clutch because I'd really like to see it. And then we got back-to-back former champions fighting on the prelim card, Aljamain Sterling, and then Yuri followed him after that. Yuri was like the headliner of the prelim card leading into the main card for the big UFC 300. And it just, an incredible gift that the UFC was putting these two guys out there for free. And I thought, Aljamain Sterling, like we were saying, this guy, I think he's been a little underlooked for his run. Let me see how long he had the belt for, because he held it for a while in that division. Again, incredibly dominant fighter. And when it was like him and Usman and Adesanya kind of side by side defending their belts for a while, he won the belt in UFC 259 versus Peter Yan. Yeah, the DQ, the illegal knees, and then 3 title defenses before he lost this last one to O'Malley. So I was like, kind of like, is this a little bit of shade at Sterling? Not respecting his sort of, popularity, putting him on the prelim card, and then 15 minutes of ground control time. I don't know if the entertainment, I don't know if this fight necessarily won a fight of the night bonus, but Aljamain Sterling definitely got the win, unanimous decision, and continues to look good in a different weight class as well, too. So shout out to Aljo. And then the Yuri fight, which of course we'll mention Pereira, he was the headliner. Yuri was saying that he wants to fight the winner of the Yuri or the Pereira Hill fight, which would make sense as well, too. And of course, he's already fought Pereira, but he gets the win, the TKO in the second round. But holy cow, Yuri, if he is just not, and I love Yuri. Yuri's quickly becoming like one of my guys. If not, maybe, I don't know if is he my favorite fighter fighting right now? Well, McGregor is officially making the return now in June. So as long as McGregor stays active, we're still Team McGregor. But Yuri is definitely up there. I mean, Pereira is making a run right now too as favorite fighter. But Jalen Turner, of course. How could I forget? Oh yeah, because 3 of his last 4 fights have been losses. But Yuri, I don't know if he should have won that fight. I don't know, just the chaotic nature of his fighting style in general, but was able to survive what looked like he was going to be and looked like a very similar recipe to that Pereira fight. I don't know if that was probably intentional too by Racic. Hopefully I'm saying that right. But I think that, after the way Pereira used the leg kicks early in that fight to really injure Yuri and really damage him a little bit. And same thing in this one, leg kicks right away. immediately limping around. So incredibly impressive that Yuri was just able to power through and win this one. I mean, that's just like his mindset. He's I'm just an incredibly mentally strong fighter. That's well known about him, and you can definitely see it in this fight. But if he is going to go against Pereira in the rematch, I think he's going to need to not do. I mean, and it's Yuri. Maybe he surprises everybody and gets the win, but I don't know if you can fight that chaotically against Pereira. But it worked for this one, and shout out to the UFC again for just gifting us Yuri Prochazka for free, headliner on the prelim card. And then Bo Nickel, I don't know. Do you switch Bo Nickel and Yuri because Yuri is the former champ? But they're trying. Bo Nickel, the rising star, incredibly dominant. The fact that they were saying going into the fight that he was like, I could use some rounds. Like, I wouldn't mind if the fight went a little bit just to get some like work in. Like, it's just like, who says that in the UFC? It's just incredible. And he was, even saying that in the post fights and stuff, that this wasn't his best performance. And still, I mean, he's like minus 2,000 odds going into the fight. And I don't think there was ever really a moment where it looked like he was in danger. He continues his run, but we got a split decision in the next fight with the Oliveira versus Arman. We'll just go with the first name for our guy, but hopefully the Oliveira run is not, winding down, running to, and it wasn't, I mean, I think it was like a 13-14 fight win streak or something like that at one point. So it's been an incredibly historic career for Oliveira, but let's see because I think now that's 2 of his last 3. And I mean, that other last loss too was to Islam. So number 1 pound for pound fighter in the world, and then gets the KO on Beneil Dariush in UFC 289 on his last fight. So, I mean, he's still obviously taking down high level opponents. And this guy that he was fighting too, I think, is aiming for the rematch for Islam, gave Islam a little bit of a run for his money early on. So, I mean, this guy's an incredibly skilled fighter as well too. I don't think it's again, we need to like start throwing big question marks at Oliveira, but I think he's just such a popular guy. There's not enough belts to go around for all the fighters that are beloved. I guess that's why they're coming up with the BMF belt, which was the next fight. But I do hope that Oliveira does get another belt. Will the next belt that Oliveira get be the BMF belt? I don't know, but if it is, and he does it in a way that's incredible, like Holloway, I mean, it'll be just as, I think, as important. I mean, this knockout win for the BMF belt was like the number 1 moment for Holloway's career. Now, I know the talk right now is this the greatest knockout of all time? I mean, Rogan right away was saying that it was up there. I don't remember if he said it was the greatest or one of the greatest. I don't remember what the exact wording was there, but I mean, just for knockouts that I've seen, it's gonna be tough to pass that Leon Edwards head kick versus Usman. I mean, it's a head kick too, so that's just kind of a unique knockout. I think that's why. I mean, the flying knee by Masvidal as well too. I think that's a pretty incredible KO. Was that like 8 seconds into the fight, fastest KO of all time? But the Edwards KO versus Usman, because the thing is, Edwards was losing that fight. I mean, even going back and rewatching it after this Holloway Gaethje fight, just the way that Cormier and Rogan and Anik are on the broadcast talking about the fight, where I mean, Usman was again at the peak of his powers in that moment and was through 5 rounds of that fight, like incredibly dominant. It seemed like nothing was going to change in the welterweight division. And then all of a sudden, bang, Leon Edwards head kick. He's now defended the belts a couple of times as well too, and has really ascended into UFC superstardom. So I mean, just the fact that was like the only way that he could win the fight was that move, I think makes it a little bit more just of a moment than, and again, it was for an actual belt as well too, for the welterweight championship. You've got the Usman legacy piece of it, but this is right up there. And if you want to say the argument that Holloway, he's winning the fight versus Gaethje again, which is the reason I think the Edwards one was a little bit better, but Holloway was up on the scorecard. So the fact that he's putting that at risk in that moment is an impressive thing. But the damage from the damage that Gaethje had taken over the course of that fight as well, too, was probably one of the reasons that he got slumped the way he did. I mean, Holloway definitely has that knockout power, but gets the BMF belt. And I mean, Holloway definitely a BMF, but is he a little bit too good to be competing for this belt? Because I mean, Poirier, like intern champ, was a guy that's definitely competing and in the mix for a belt. Same with Gaethje as well too, former interim champ. But I believe Holloway like actually had the belt at one point in his career as well too. And for his MMA career, he's 26-7 record, and he won the featherweight belt, defended it twice, and then lost it, or defended it 4 times. Excuse me. There was another one to Frankie Edwards as well too. He tried to go up and beat Poirier for the lightweight championship, but Poirier was able to beat him at this time. And then this fight versus Gaethje was actually Holloway making his return to lightweight as well too, but defended the featherweight belt 4 times. And then, I mean, these are his losses. His last 2 losses or last 3 losses have been to Volkanovski, who was for a while there, also the number 1 pound for pound fighter. Again, lost to Poirier when he at the time was going again up in a weight class. And then his last loss from Poirier, which would have been in 2019. And you have to go all the way back to 2013. And it's Conor McGregor, again, another all-time guy. So, I mean, Holloway is a champion, a multi-time champion, and should definitely have secured the BMF belt, I think. And, I mean, again, the hype around that, I think, has thrown his name in the mix. Who did he call out? Did he call it Topuria? If I remember that correctly. Let me go pull up the divisions here again, because he moved up to lightweight, so that's Islam's division. Yeah, but for this Gaethje match for the BMF belt. So I think back to featherweight to call out Topuria, and he is the number 2 contender in the division right now. And Topuria had just beaten Volkanovski. Volkanovski is the number 1. You've got Brian Ortega at 3, Yair Rodriguez at 4. So I think giving Holloway a chance, the next champion shot. If it's not going to be Volk, I think Holloway next up would be the move. And I guess even after this knockout is the question, should Holloway get the shot over Volk at this point if Volk wants to move forward with that? Because that's when I post fight, and I think maybe in like the YouTube videos and stuff he was doing afterwards as well too. Like he was saying that he wanted the rematch with Topuria. But if Holloway wants to fight, what do you guys think? Do you think that Holloway should get the matchup over Volkanovski? And is this the greatest knockout of all time? Again, if you want to put it in the Mount Rushmore, I think it's definitely, that's totally fair. But yeah, that Edwards one is just going to be hard to top. But then the co-main, or I guess I don't know if it was technically a co-main event, but the second fight of the night, and I know I'm not going to say these fighters' names right, but is it Zhang Wei Li, the champion who defended her belt? And this one ended up being a 5-round fight, a unanimous decision for Zhang Wei Li as well too. But I mean, there was a moment in the first round where she has the opponent, and I forget what exactly the move was, but she was getting ready. Like the opponent was either getting ready to tap or was getting ready to go to sleep, and Zhang Wei Li was just going to win the fight. And there was a moment where it was like, okay, is the ref going to step in here and stop the fight? And I want to even say on the broadcast, they were like, I don't know, maybe this thing should be stopped. But I mean, shout out to the ref, which has been a thing in the UFC a little bit as well too recently with some of the stoppages. I mean, speaking of Yuri Prohaska and Pereira, that their last fight was kind of a suspect stoppage as well too. So the ref really let this one go. And I mean, again, unanimous decision in the end for Zhang Wei Li, retains her belt, and she's the number 2 pound for pound women fighter in the world right now. So, again, ultimately, I think it's suspected that her dominance remains. But the fact that her opponent was still able to get up after that, go the 5 rounds, make her work, go the distance was an incredible, shout out to her. And again, shout out to the ref for really having, a good eye in that moment and letting it go. But this fight card in the Midwest. This took all these fights took us up till about, I want to say this last fight ended about 12:15. So honestly, I fell asleep for the Pereira Hill fight, and then fortunately, shout out to X, there was maybe I won't say there was a full video on X because we don't want to get our sources taken away in case we miss any of these other pay-per-view events. But we were able to watch the one round of the Pereira Hill fight. And, in defense of Hill, I believe they were saying that, he had ruptured his Achilles tendons, which was the injury that he had, which was the reason he had vacated the belt and the reason that Pereira was able to go in, and the reason that him and Prohaska were fighting for it. And he really grinded on the recovery. They were saying that, ruptured Achilles is like a year-long injury. It was a 10-month recovery for Hill instead when he was able to make his return. And Pereira is, I think the UFC had moved him up right now to like 4 in the pound for pound rankings. I mean, he is really making a case now and putting together quite the legacy as a UFC fighter. So, him dominating this fight, again, is no surprise. But I think Hill you can definitely see the time off a little bit. I think he was a little bit slow. And again, I think Pereira is just moving at an all-time pace right now. He is really cooking. And the leg kick stuff from him is, I don't know if transcendent is the right word. Again, I don't really have the knowledge of the UFC history to know what the history of the leg kick is in the UFC, but I just know the way that he uses it in his game plan is super unique. And again, like in the Prohaska fight, and just basically that's his go-to thing. And it works all the time, where just right away, go out, leg kick, bang, bang, get the guy injured. And once he's crippled and moving around, it's not even that he's closer to beating the opponent, but the opponent can't really get the power to throw punches back as well too. So it's not just the movements down, but the punches are weak. So it really is just, I think, I'll say from my perspective, really changed on how I view what a really effective game plan is against him. And I think Hill was ready for that aspect of his game. And I think Pereira, tried it again early, didn't really, and this was a short fight, but it seemed like he was going to be ready to pivot away from that if he had to. And then you just see the punching power with Pereira, where this was just a clean one shot knockout. I think Hill was leaning into it a little bit as well too, which, never helps if you're leaning into the punch, but very clean KO from Pereira. Of course, the cold celebration afterwards as well too. And I don't, I get the weight class thing in the UFC, but I don't get how you can be, the fact that weighing in 3 days, why do you have to be at the weight 3 days before the fight? And then all of a sudden Pereira just gets to balloon. And I'm not even trying to criticize the UFC or say that they need to change that or whatever. It's just if that's the way it can be, and Pereira can clock in at 205 and then be fighting a couple days, 48, 24 hours later and be 25 pounds heavier. And the fact that he's always able to do it, and just seemingly he's got a Christian Bale body where he can just seemingly go back and forth with these weight cuts. The fact that he's now fighting at lightweight and doing the whole, cut the weight and then just put it all right back on before the fight. The fact that he's doing that at lightweight, it's just I can't believe that this guy was fighting at middleweight and trying to cut down to 185 and was again looking phenomenal. I mean, he beat Adesanya in that first matchup, and then Adesanya does get him in that second matchup, but I went back and rewatched that one as well too, and that was early. He got him, second round in that one, and got him with a similar move that he had gotten him at the end of the first round in the first fight, where Pereira he had wobbled him, and it seemed like, is there a moment where Adesanya is going to turn the tables here? But I mean, even in the fight that Adesanya won, you could just see Adesanya, his respect for Pereira, his respect was just way higher. Pereira really has to make him work. And Adesanya's winning move is him baiting just Pereira in just, an incredibly all-time creative way, where he goes back in and it seems like he's going to take the L. And it seems like Pereira is going to really start to pour it on him. And then again, it's just baiting him, and then is really able to, you go back and watch, just get a really phenomenal clean shot on Pereira, but takes like like crafty moves from Adesanya to get around this guy. But again, got the win against Prohaska, beat Hill now, beat Jan Blachowicz as well too, which I had forgotten about in his light heavyweight debut before he won the title. But two-time champ, and again, is really like we were talking about Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes. I guess nobody. John Jones is just going to beat whoever you face against him in the all-time matchup. But in terms of like all-time light heavyweight, middleweight type guys, his fighter package, again, like the video game style, the attributes, he is really putting together to case to just being a really scary guy. And that knockout power with the leg kicks is just incredible. And it's like, he doesn't even need to be, I don't know, he might pound for pound just have the strongest punch. I know, Ngannou is not in the UFC anymore, and he has that, I think does he still have the world record punch for strongest punch? Because I mean, that would make sense, but yeah, it's still listed as Ngannou. But again, I don't know, pound for pound, Pereira at his size, he's definitely up there. So, again, incredible card all the way through. All the fights were super dramatic. Even the fact that the Pereira Hill fight was a little bit shorter. It's like this card was like a 5-hour card. I mean, even that was totally okay. We got Kyler Murray sitting next to Shevchenko. They cut to that at one point, and I was like, is that just luck of the draw? Were they hanging out? Are they friends now? What's going on? But super fun. UFC 300. Is in the books. Let's see what's up next here for the UFC, because like we said, we got that McGregor Chandler fight in the works, finally on the horizon for June. But I think that's UFC like 303, 302. So UFC 301. Oh yeah, we got Pantoja fighting Urseg. If I said that right, Pantoja trying to retain his belt in Rio de Janeiro. UFC 302 is the Makhachev versus Poirier card. And then 303 will be Chandler versus McGregor in T-Mobile in Las Vegas. Let's go, ladies and gentlemen. The return of Conor McGregor, the notorious MMA. I'm excited. That's my guy. He's back. When was the last time he fought? It would have been that Poirier fight. Has it been... Sometimes you get the fighter timeline mixed up with the real timeline, and then you're like, wait a second, it's been 12 months since Conor McGregor fought. But that was a nasty, nasty injury, and we knew the recovery for that was going to be lengthy, and that would have taken place in 2021. So July 10th, 2021 was the leg injury versus Poirier. So if that's in June, I mean, almost 3 years for McGregor out of the UFC, living off that Mayweather money that he made on the boxing match, and proper 12. I'm sure keeping the books nice and fat, but making his UFC return versus Michael Chandler. Super excited for that. Also wanted to mention quickly, shout out to the WNBA draft. Of course, Caitlin Clark, #1 overall, pair her up with Aaliyah Boston. It's going to be great. And I was looking at teams for the NBA that had the #1 pick in back-to-back years. And you've got the Rockets in 83-84 when they get the Samson-Hakeem combo. And then the Cavs when they got the Bennett-Wiggins combo. Maybe not the example we want to bring up. And then another shaky one, the Sixers in 16-17 got the Simmons-Fultz combo. But the Bennett-Wiggins combo, just different drafts. I mean, I think Aaliyah Boston last year was a pretty unanimous #1. And I mean, Caitlin Clark this year has been about an obvious of a #1 that we've had in any sport in maybe, I don't know, ever. But I guess Wiggins was the #1, a clear #1 prospect when he was in his draft as well, too. But again, I think just different levels of draft. The Samson-Hakeem combo, I guess, was, super successful. A couple of Hall of Famers. Made the finals, didn't win a ring with that combo. Ultimately, they win with Hakeem, but I don't know if that applies to this situation because it's kind of a big to big sort of thing. But there was one that I didn't mention, and that is 1992 93. The Magic take Shaq in 92 and then have the number 1 pick again in 93. They take Chris Webber, but they trade the pick for Penny Hardaway. So you've got the big guard combination of Shaq and Penny. Of course, you know, it was ultimately like a documentary worthy run, and not because they won titles, but you know, I think incredibly successful. And I think we would say that anybody would take that combination of guys, obviously. So I don't know, is Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark the next Shaq and Penny over there for the Fever? I think they definitely hope so. And I think they said on ESPN that they had like 17,000 people at a draft party for the Fever, which is just nuts. Because I was looking up their attendance for last year, and they were averaging like $4K a game per game during the season last year. So I think if this many people are just tuning in for the draft party, I think, and we already know from ticket sales and what these teams are doing with making moves with I think the Aces trying to find different arenas and stuff. We already know the financial impact that she's going to have for that team and for the league. I was looking up, trying to find like other tickets as well too, because I mean, you know, we're only a couple hours of drive now from the Chicago Skies. So I was trying to see what some Chicago Sky tickets were going to be. And I mean, you know, it's kind of similar to Bulls prices right now. And I mean, they've got similar hype as well too. I know, you know, again, the Fever get Caitlin Clark, and I guess you could say that they won the draft for getting the historic player, obviously. But I mean, the Chicago Sky getting Cardoso at 3 and then getting Angel Reese at 7 is just an incredible 1-2 combination. And they're, you know, I know in a little bit of a rebuild right now. I believe they got the number 2 pick in the draft this year because of a major trade they made. They traded one of their guards, Kalia Cooper, who was the finals MVP when they won the finals in, I believe, the 2021 season. And they traded her away and got like multiple firsts, multiple seconds, a couple of players back. I mean, you know, it was like a real star player trade. They were hitting the reset button, and to get this kind of a front court duo to build around, I think defensively, they're going to be studs. They're going to rebound incredibly. And again, Angel Reese at 7 is just incredible value. I know some of the WNBA stuff was like, there's no like the outside shot still needs to develop. And the overall, some questions about her offensive game. She's a little bit of a tweener, I think. I mean, she'll be the 4, but again, if she doesn't really have that shot, it's like, where does she fit? But, you know, next to Cardoso, it's like, I think that's a match made in heaven, those two next to each other. And I don't know if you have to pause that or not, but I think Cardoso, the defense that she's going to be able to add, and the offense as well, too, that post-up offense, I think is going to be great. And just Angel Reese's effort, I mean, I would have argued take her in the top 5. But again, that's why I can't be a WNBA draft, because if she shows up in that dress, maybe I'm picking her number 1. But, you know, I think getting that value is, again, I think incredible value. And I think, you know, it was like Aaliyah Edwards was 6 and JC Sheldon from Ohio State was 5, because I think the top 4 was pretty set between Clark, Cameron Brake, Cardoso went 3, and then Rakia Jackson went 4. And I think those 4 players were the unanimous top 4 players. I really love Aaliyah Edwards' game as well, too. Again, she hasn't really added the 3-point range yet, but the mid-range jumper is like on point. You can put her at the top of the key. She's an incredible playmaker. The defense is there. I don't know, kind of like Bam Adebayo. I was going to say Bam Adebayo-y vibes, but Bammy Adebayo-y vibes for Aaliyah Edwards. A little quicker, you know, if she's able to get the steal and like go on the fast break, but can definitely, you know, playmaker, defense at the 4 position. I love what she can provide for that Mystics team. So shout out to the WNBA, shout out to the WNBA draft class. And it's going to be pretty exciting to see what they do. That season starts in, I believe, 1 month to the day that we're recording this. So we're recording this part Tuesday night. Like we said, the games are just about to tip. So, and you know, the WNBA season is just about to tip in a month too. So, you know, we're going to be locked into the Aces, Becky Hammon as always, but super excited to check out Caitlin Clark. I mean, we're going to have the opportunity as well too with, I think the number was 36 of the 40 games that the Fever are going to play are going to be nationally televised games. So I guess that's going to be ESPN. I don't know. Does ESPN, are they counting like ESPN2 as a nationally televised game? Because I know, you know, they'll sneak they'll sneak a WNBA game on there. They'll sneak a WNBA game on NBA TV as well too, which I guess that, that is a nationally televised game. But I think they're probably going to definitely, I think they're getting a lot of like ABC run and real ESPN run as well too. So it's not just, fake trying to pump up the numbers or anything like that. Like this is, 17,000 people at a draft party is, I think, a real number and something to be pretty excited about as well too. And I think Caitlin Clark is going to jump right in and be fine. I know there's questions about the translation a little bit, but what are the expectations for her in the WNBA? Because I think we were just absolutely wowed by Wembanyama's season, and it's not like the Spurs' team had a lot of success. So, there is a world where Caitlin Clark, plays well. The stats, like she shows all the pieces, and it maybe doesn't necessarily translate for wins. And I don't think that's a bad thing as well too, because like I said, that's very common for rookies in other sports. But Aaliyah Boston is there the number one pick. They were 5 wins when they were drafting Aaliyah Boston the season before. So the fact that they were at like double-digit wins this last year is like, okay, there is at least a little bit of sunlight here at the end of the tunnel. And now it's Boston and Caitlin Clark. I think, even if Caitlin Clark has to have her, if, like Wemby had a leap over the second half of the season, if she has that growth stretch over the first half of the season, then maybe, having like Aaliyah Boston there to help supplement that could be really beneficial to the Fever winning games if they're going to try to be competitive. Because I know Shannon Sharp was saying today on First Take that he was thinking that they could be 500. And, in the WNBA, 500, I think you're looking at probably a playoff team in that scenario. Maybe, maybe with the new injection of talent in the league this year and the way that some of the talent has moved around too. I know like Seattle got a lot stronger and some of the teams are gearing up. Maybe that changes a little bit, but again, I think we'll just have to watch and see because we'll know we'll know it when we see it with Caitlin Clark. And I think there's multiple versions of it where hey, maybe again like the shooting's not there, but the playmaking is just on point, and it's like okay, she's conducting the offense. Boston is in her second year of scoring, and this team's really cooking. Like there's multiple ways this season could go, and I think she's going to step right in and be fantastic. I was looking at rookies that had made the all WNBA team, so like the all NBA team for the women as a rookie, and there have been 10 of them. So I think they're like 26, 27 seasons in. You get one every other season. I think that's a high bar to hit as a rookie, and I think for the WNBA it's a little different as well too because it's only 12 teams. So it's like, what if the NBA just like split in half and the rookies had to if there was like a League A and League B and rookies had to try to make League A, like what would the rookies, how many rookies would make it? What would the rookies that are making it look like? Like, I think if we did that and you put Wembanyama in League A, I think the same thing would have happened over the course of this season. And I think, different types of players, but I think Caitlin Clark, I think she's going to be fine this year. I think we're really going to see her on-court game translate well. I think the shooting, the playmaking, it's all going to come together perfectly. And I think the season, the number, who cares? I think, like I said, it's going to be a fantastic season for Caitlin Clark on the Fever. Shout out to Kate Martin as well, too, her Iowa teammate who got drafted to the Aces. And I think she could really I think there might be a moment where, Kate Martin could check into a game and swing some stuff because she plays hard, can shoot the three, and was just really important with that team making the title runs they did the last couple of years as well, too. Hit some big shots. And I think the Aces, I was looking at some of the players that they drafted because they were picking in like the second round, and it seemed like they got some good value. No shocker that the Aces are on top of the game. They got like this Syracuse guard who's like an electric scorer, and then a post player who is kind of like a draft and stash type player will be recovering from an injury during this upcoming 2024 season. So she won't be quite available, but the Aces are the most loaded roster in the league. So they don't really even have use for a rookie anyway. That's why I think, I think the one kind of rookie they could use would be like the Kate Martin type rookie. Or, I think, was it like Gaethje Fair or something like that? I know Fair was the last name of the point guard that they had taken out of Syracuse. So, shout out to you. And, maybe it's like a moment where they need to, I don't know if they're just like Celtics winning away with the regular season record and she's going to be able, second half of a game, check in, score some buckets, get some bench minutes for them. But it seemed like they did a good job as well too. So it's going to be fun to watch the season. Maybe we'll have to get Sam to do like a WNBA team of the year. I know maybe we don't want Sam to throw the jinx on the WNBA team of the year though. I know that wasn't maybe what the Portland Trailblazers fans were expecting this year, even though I don't know what we were expecting from the Trailblazers, but we better get to watching these play-in games. Pelican Lakers is about to fire up here. So thank you guys for tuning into the episode. Be back this weekend when me and Sam are back for the actual Rem and Sam pod. And stay tuned to all the socials. We're going to be Rem and Sam or Rem and Sam podcast on basically any platform you guys can think of. Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Apple. We're out there. Rem and Sam podcast, if you guys can think about it. So thank you guys for listening and be back for the next episode. Good night, ladies and gentlemen.